With a law degree, a few dollars, and a dream, Charles King rose from the mailroom to partner at William Morris Endeavor, and then stunned the entertainment industry by launching his own multicultural media company, Macro. This is his blueprint. You grew up in Georgia. You went to school as a poli-sci major, eventually got a law degree. At what point in that did you decide, I want to move across the country and get into the entertainment industry?
Somewhere along the line, someone said, hey, you're studying political science at Vanderbilt. You have an interest in entertainment. Have you ever thought about entertainment law? I had no idea what an entertainment lawyer did, but that show way back in the day, LA Law, the character played by Blair Underwood, the idea of that character, that charismatic African-American lawyer stuck in my head, and I said, oh, that could be interesting. And so I went on to law school at Howard University, and it was at Howard my focus was completely on entertainment. And through all of my clerkships and the experience and exposure that I got, that's where I got the bug, and someone told me about the talent agency world. So from there, I charted west.
Now, you had spent 3 years studying the law,
Yeah.
and you are now thinking about a career that has sort of only a tangential relationship to being a lawyer, right?
Yeah.
Did you feel like any sort of pushback, from your family? Were people looking at you like?
They were definitely supportive, but there was a feeling of, well, okay, are you sure? Are you sure? I'm a definite, and I learned about so many people who went into the mailroom, who became powerful agents that were lawyers or had MBAs. And it's not like I was going along a path that others hadn't gone through. And this is what you do in the industry. People pay their dues and they start from the ground floor up.
When you get on the plane, though, to fly out west, like how much money do you have in your bank account? What does the runway look like for you to get this done?
First off, there was no plane, okay?
That's a big one.
It was a U-Haul truck, and I had very limited funds. I didn't have a car. I didn't have a computer, and I flew out to take meetings and pick out an apartment, and I talked my way into an apartment by showing my Howard Law diploma. And so I moved into a one-room apartment without a car. I bought a car on a credit card for $2,000, and I bought a computer. I don't remember what I had in the bank, but it was very limited. It was under $500, it was not much. And so I had about 60 meetings over 6 weeks, and I got 4 offers, all from talent agency. I said, look, I'm gonna start at the oldest one in the business. I'm gonna start in the legendary William Morris training program, and I went into that mailroom. Really, it's a way to build relationships from the ground floor up, to understand the language. And I think about those relationships that I formed. I mean, from everyone from the people who are running the copy center, down the mailroom, the people that are full-time mailroom staff, to the CEO of the company. I got to know everyone during that time, and it was, they dropped me into a pot of gold. How much gold do you want to mine? And I used that time to soak up every single minute and every bit of knowledge that I could, and built these incredible relationships that really still to this day serve me throughout everything that I've been doing in building this company, and definitely all the years that I was an agent.
So what are the conversations that a mailroom trainee has with the CEO of William Morris?
I had conversations with them, and I would send proposals and charts about the shifting demographics in the country, and how youth culture is impacted by urban culture, and how that was pop culture. You think about where hip hop was and the climb of everything with what Puffy was doing, Bad Boy, and there's so much that was going on at the time. And so looking at that and saying the same thing is gonna happen, and that you're gonna see this cultural shift that we've seen in music and fashion, it's gonna happen in television, and it's going to happen in film, and it's going to happen on the online arena as well. And we're seeing that take place now.
And how are these memos being received?
They were well received. They understood. Of course, as the only African American in that trainee program, and definitely, blazing history there, I had to do my part. So, read twice as many scripts. I came in early. I was the last one there. I came in every weekend, was bringing in clients and cultivating business. Way before I was an agent, I was bringing in all kinds of clients even before then.
Like who?
So I used to go to all these entertainment law conferences and building these relationships with music lawyers. And so Louise West and Daryl Miller introduced me to Missy Elliott when she was at the height of her career, and I brought her in when I was still a trainee.
When you're a trainee in the mailroom and you go meet Missy Elliott, who at the time was probably sitting on a couple platinum records.
Yeah.
What is your pitch to make her, believe that you can represent her?
The way that I approached most of the artists that I was interested in, that I worked with, was to understand their vision. What was their 5-year plan? What was their 10-year plan? And then I would look at the resource base of this vast agency and how are we going to tap into it.
What were your big early wins with those first few clients?
So Tim Story I met when he was at the height of the whole music video time, and he was doing videos for NSYNC and Tyrese and all these other big R&B and hip-hop artists. So he was one of the top music video directors in the space. He made a couple of films when he was in film school. He went to USC. And so I started hip-hocking him when I was on the desk in the film group. And my first year as an agent, I was covering MGM, and MGM had just acquired this spec script called Barbershop. I worked in conjunction with one of my partners and colleagues, Poppy Hanks, who worked at that production company then, and we put it together and took Tim in there. A year later, they shot the movie, and 2 or so years into being an agent, this massive franchise was this huge hit, made for under $10 million. It did over $75 million domestically, and it's going on to make, to have 2 or 3 sequels. And so that was an early hit from my very first director client.
A lot is made out of the importance that agents play in sort of sculpting the careers of their artists, but the inverse relationship has to also be true. When you look at the clients that you represented, who were the ones that were the most important to helping you shape your career?
I think about my good friend Ryan Coogler, who I was blessed to meet with when he first shared his script with us for Fruitvale Station. He was just sharing his background at SC and what the story meant to him. And it was just clear that what he was going to do with this film and telling Oscar Grant's story was much bigger than a young filmmaker who was looking to make his movie coming out of USC. They had a mission and a purpose behind elevating culture and impacting communities that was far beyond what he was going to do as a filmmaker. And I really learned a lot about community activism, frankly. And a lot of the things that I was able to accomplish on an entrepreneurial level with a number of my clients. But I look at some of the risks and the stepping out on faith that one of my clients, Tyler Perry, that he took. He invested in himself, and he stepped out on faith on that very first movie, Diary of a Mad Black Woman, and co-financed that with the studio. And the deal that we structured was, a foundational piece of this empire, and that would not have happened had he not invested in himself. I definitely took lessons and learned a lot from everyone that I work with, but then there were there were certain key things that really drove the needle and still resonate to this day.
King scored some early and important wins, but the entrepreneur in him came to Hollywood with a plan, and he intended to get back to it. What were the inflection points that catapulted you from being an agent to being a VP to being an SVP to eventually making a partner?
When I went from being agent to VP, it was around 2004, so it was 3-4 years into being an agent. I signed and started working with DMX at the height of all the action movies he was doing. Andre Benjamin took off with Hey Ya. So a client base that I invested a lot of time and energy into began to, really have cultural resonance, as well as began to do well economically, and their business took off and started to thrive. And then when I went from vice president to senior vice president, it was a perfect storm of amazing events that happened all at once, from Hustle and Flow with Craig Brewer I worked with being the largest sale in Sundance history at the same time that Tyler Perry's first movie took off, and everyone in Hollywood was like, who is he? I can't believe this. Where did it come from? To signing and starting to represent Terrence Howard right as he was getting nominated for Academy Award, then it was signing and working with Prince. And all of these things happened within about a 8-9 month period of time. I think it was also starting to work with Janet Jackson. It was just a confluence of incredible things that happened all at once. And so then I went from VP to senior VP. And then when we merged, when William Morris merged with Endeavor, and the reset was hit for all of the shareholders of William Morris, as well as the partners at from Endeavor. We were all thrown in the sandbox together. It was during the restructuring of the company. It was then they set up a partnership group, and then I was positioned as one of the first group of partners at the company when that happened.
Things seem to be going exceedingly well, and all of a sudden you decide that it's time to disrupt this and make your job much more difficult by launching your own company. What was the moment that you looked up and said, this is all great and I'm enjoying my time at WME, but I want to do something completely different?
This was my plan when I moved to Los Angeles. It was to, within a 10-year period of time, to be at the helm of a diversified entertainment and media company. And so I spent a lot of time continuing to represent artists during the day while building my relationships on my Rolodex. I became a very active investor, angel investor in the tech scene. I got very involved in the political world. I cultivated relationships on Wall Street, in the private equity world, and in the venture capital space, so that when I launched the company Macro in 2015, I have relationships with all of these incredible people throughout other sectors outside of entertainment. So we wanted a space that was artist-friendly and creative and vibrant. You know, we all have to spend more time of the day at our place of work than at home usually. And so we wanted to be a place where you would want to be here and you would hang out and you could feel creative. We wanted a really open area. And so this is like, I guess you would call it the bullpen of people just all exchanging ideas and information.
You launched the new company. Immediately, I imagine it's sort of like, you know, out of the fire into the frying pan.
Yes, for sure.
What was the first, like, monumental challenge that you had to face?
When I made the leap of faith in January of 15, I had a term sheet that was negotiated from an initial group of investors, but there's a huge difference between a term sheet and a long form agreement, and it's actually wired and in the bank. And so when I took the leap of faith, it was a leap of faith without a dollar in the bank. It was a belief in myself and in the vision and what we were doing. It was like jumping off of a 50-story building naked.
Macro's first movie out the gate was Fences,
yes,
which went on to be a commercial hit, but perhaps more importantly, to be nominated and win Oscars. What is the significance for the company in that success?
One, it showed the reason for a company like Macro to exist. Here was an incredible story with two of the most amazing, compelling artists of our time, Denzel Washington, Viola Davis, based off of the work by August Wilson. And this movie was actually having a challenge actually getting made. And for a company like Macro, in its first year of existence, to come in and provide the financing alongside Paramount Pictures to help this movie get made when it was teetering on existing. And for that movie to then actually show that there was an audience that responded to it, that loved it, that was also wide and vast, and then to have it also critically be acknowledged by the industry with their peers was on so many fronts a major win. And we wanted people to pick out wallpaper that represents their personality, and so that it could be vibrant and creative and unique and different than what you would get in a regular kind of corporate environment. She's got pear trees, she's got peacocks, and that brings us here. So every day, there's always all kinds of incredible filmmakers and actors and social media influencers, politicians, sports players, all sorts of people that come in and hang with us. And so we were like, hey, this is a cool thing. We created a wall of like our friends and stuff. You know, you can see it, whether it's everyone from my girl Janelle Monáe to Lauren London to John Singleton, the executives, it's just some of everyone who we have projects with, who we do stuff with, who we're building with.
Throughout your career, and I know particularly with Macro, you seem to have focused on sort of making smaller to mid-level bets on movies, like in the sort of 10 million zone. What is it about that sweet spot that you sort of enjoy the most?
You think about the sweet spot, look at some of the movies that have had tremendous breakout performance recently. Look at how well Get Out performed. Look at the impact that Hidden Figures had. These were movies that responded culturally to a multicultural audience, had a unique point of view, telling stories that haven't been told before, like these 3 brilliant black women, stories that would have never been seen before, and look at how well they performed financially, not only domestically but internationally. And so there's a huge opportunity to make compelling content within a limited budget range that's not overboard and can still generate massive returns and still also, be seen by the masses. But obviously over time, we hope to expand and make movies at a much larger budget range. So you think about what Ryan Coogler's doing with Black Panther, or you think about Ava DuVernay with Wrinkle in Time. There could be movies on a much larger canvas that this company would finance and produce as we grow and expand as well.
As the major studios finally acknowledge the power of diversity, King and Macro are positioning themselves to lead the future of film, television, and digital. So we've talked a lot about your many, many successes. I imagine along the way there have been some moments that have been a little bit more challenging. Mm-hmm. What are the failures or the challenges that you look at as probably the most instructive?
When I launched Macro, as I was navigating out of WME, I was having conversations with an initial group of investors where I felt uncomfortable with some of the conversations that were happening, and I had to be willing to truly bet on myself and walk away from this deal after 17 years. And this was after I had launched the company. I was no longer at WME. I had to believe in myself, what me and my colleagues were going to build. And that's really that compass of when something doesn't sit well in your gut, when you don't feel like something is the right partner and there isn't mission alignment with the people you're in business with, that's not business you should be in.
When you were courting these investors, what was the sort of first red flag that said, this is not going to work for us?
Well, it was clear with the first group of investors that there was more of an interest for short-term gain. And even in some of the conversation, the word exploit was used. There's nothing about what we're building as a company that has anything to do with exploitation. And I think there were enough signs of kind of prior business activity that I knew that probably was going to be the wrong fit for us. I want to work with people who believe in us and believe in our mission, see a business opportunity, but also see how it's going to uplift and make communities better, not just make as many billions of dollars as possible. There's got to be some sort of kind of symbiotic relationship between the two.
Well, some billions would probably be okay.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna make billions, but we want to do it in a smart and thoughtful way as we elevate communities while also doing good business.
The world has changed pretty dramatically from the days when barbershop came out.
Yeah.
And particularly the multicultural marketplace has changed quite dramatically. What do you think the biggest things that have shifted are?
I think clearly television has embraced and understands this audience. I remember when I wrote that first business plan in 2011, Scandal wasn't even on the air yet. And you think about what happened with Shondaland and the huge impact that she's had on ABC, and then ultimately even look at the new head of that network. So that's positive growth there alone. What's even additionally exciting now is all of the newer voices. You think about the impact that Atlanta had and the uniqueness and the writer's room that Donald Glover put together that truly reflected the culture and made that show authentic. And you think about what Issa Rae and Insecure has represented, having come out of the digital space. I'd say that we're going to continue to see growth there. We're going to definitely see more people on the film side continue to realize that. It's with all of the change and disruption, there's tremendous opportunity. And I think that those who are smart and are pivoting and are thinking ahead are going to be the ones who are going to really benefit.
You know, things happen like the Oscar So White controversy 2 years ago. You have to scratch your head and again, as an outsider, think, how could this possibly have happened? And from your perspective, were you shocked by this or not really?
I wasn't shocked at all, because I've been sitting in the room at a major talent agency for the last 12 years, knowing every project that every studio and every financier is focused on making. And if they're not making compelling stories that reflect the spectrum of the community and marketplace, how is anything going to bubble up to actually get nominated if they're not actually being greenlit or made? And so it wasn't surprising. It's symbolic of a major, larger issue with Hollywood. It was less about the Academy and Oscar So White and more of just a symbolic of what's going on in the industry.
Speaking of the Academy, you were recently invited to be a member.
Yes. Yes.
Tell me about what that receiving that acknowledgement is like.
I was really honored to be invited to join and be a part of this incredible group and organization of amazing artists and producers. I thought that it was a great sign, not only for me, but also for others who will look to come after me to be a part of the Academy and a part of the sea change, a positive sea change that I believe is happening within the industry.
When you reflect on your period as an agent and also perhaps being a CEO, what are the most important attributes that a person who aspires to succeed in that world has to have?
In an industry where there can be a loose code of ethics, when you're someone who actually has integrity and honesty, and you give your word and you stick to that and you become known for that, you can set yourself above and beyond others in the industry who may not necessarily adhere to those same rules. And that was one thing that I always tried to do, was to always recognize where I came from and who I am, and not let the kind of cloud and all of the kind of Hollywood bells and whistles and everything that was going on around me and in the industry affect my compass, and to really continue to drive through it and not let that affect how I did business. And I found that it helped me to stand out and become known for being different than others. And I would say that if others followed suit, I would hope and think that they would be quite successful in this industry.